Welcome to Rewired for Great Success with Dr. Aimee V. Sanchez, neuropsychologist, executive coach, organizational development expert, award-winning best-selling author, and international speaker. Dr. Sanchez is on a mission to impact 1 million leaders through her thought leadership and specialized programs for women leaders. She is passionate about helping organizations strategize and draw a direct connection between leadership, diversity and inclusion, and organizational outcomes. Welcome to the conversation.
1, 2, 3. Hello, I'm Dr. Aimee V. Sanchez, neuropsychologist, OD expert, and executive coach, and I am your host for today's experience. Today, I'm here with Deborah Smith Pegues, author, international speaker, and interpersonal. I'm going to start over. Hello, I'm Dr. Aimee V. Sanchez, neuropsychologist, OD expert, and executive coach. I'm your host for today's experience, and I have the opportunity to be here today with Deborah Smith Pegues, author, international speaker, and interpersonal communications strategist. She's also a TV host of the highly acclaimed TBN show, Winning with Deborah, which is featured on the TBN Salsa Network, and she is an accomplished businesswoman. Deborah has penned over 18 books, such as The 1 Minute Money Mentor for Women, which dives into the mechanics and dynamics of money management and really gives you practical life strategies that you can use to empower yourself financially as a woman. She's also written 30 Days to Taming Your Tongue, which sold over 1 million copies. And in her most recent book released on August 11th, called Lead Like a Woman, Deborah, as a former Fortune 500 executive, teaches women leaders how their unique female qualities can really help you to position for success. She also teaches you in this book how to embrace the 12 traits that can help you excel as a leader and helps you to effectively eliminate those 12 tendencies that are getting in your way and hindering your progress. So I invited Deborah here today to talk about this amazing book and to gain some insight and wisdom from her about women leaders and how they can elevate their leadership and lead by faith. So I want to begin by congratulating Deborah on this latest release. Congratulations, Deborah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aimee, and I just love you, and I'm just delighted to be here with you.
I love you too. Thank you for being here. You know, the topics that you covered in this book are so timely, and I really feel as women leaders, as people, we need to be having these conversations. So not only do I want to congratulate you, but I want to thank you for taking the time to write this book.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So with that, I want to ask you, you know, when you got into thinking about the concept and how you were going to go in to write this book, why did you feel that now was the time that you needed to write on this topic? And ultimately, just kind of what are some takeaways that you wanted readers to gain?
Well, I read a startling statistic to get started, and it said that it would take another 200 years for women to achieve gender equality in major areas of their business or life or whatever. And I thought, 200 years? Who has 200 years? So I said, not forget about the major movement, because we definitely want to be a part of that momentum, but let's learn a way to fast track our individual journey. So when I set out to write the book, I looked at things that I said, okay, you know, I believe women are born to lead. We have so many inherent traits, and we'll get into them, that position us to be great leaders. But we also, from time to time, engage in behavior that really sabotages our progress. So it's a very fair and balanced approach. I look, the first half deals with the 12 traits that we've been given that we need to embrace and manage. And the second half say, hey, stop these 12 things. You need to pay attention to this because this isn't going to help you. So that's what it's about. And it's very practical, you know, nothing deep. You can read it at an 8th or 9th grade level. So it's for everybody. It's not for women trying to be CEO of a major corporation. It's for anybody who leads, because my old mentor, John Maxwell, says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So it's not just for the woman who wants to be CEO, whether you're organizing a bake sale or you're head of the PTA, if they call it that anymore, or if you are climbing the corporate ladder, there are things you need to know that will really enhance your journey. Yeah.
Yes. I think too, what you mentioned is I have had a chance to sneak peek the book for you listeners out there. And it is amazing. And as Deborah said, she's written something for everybody. But what I've seen is that statistic was shocking to me. Because if you are just like leading in your life, doing what you have to do, holding it down, you're not thinking about the big picture, the schematic. But when somebody puts
Yeah.
that in numbers, it makes an impact, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And when you quantify that, you go like, oh, wait a minute. And so, but you know what? We're not stuck by that. We're not bound by those stats. I always tell people, don't be bound by stats and facts. Use them as motivation to say, hey, I'm going to be an exception to that. They're not talking about me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, having that persistence. But even with that, there are some very unique and common obstacles that women leaders face, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And I was just got off an interview and the woman asked me, are there gender obstacles as well as racial obstacles? And I say for the Black woman, yes, because we're always dealing with this stereotype. And I think we have this great fear that we're going to perpetuate it. So we enter the room trying to make sure we don't perpetuate the stereotype of being too soft or not being strong enough. And so we try so hard to do that until sometimes we make ourselves weak. So when I talk about lead like a woman, it really started with that concept. The implication is not like a man. Lead like a woman and not like a man. And let me say up front, this is not an anti-male book. I mean, we are for men. I'm married to a man, 41 years. All right. So it's not about beating men up or trying to promote the superiority of women. It's about working hand in hand. No more of this hand-to-hand comeback, but hand-in-hand collaboration so that we can get the job done. I think it's interesting that from the beginning of time, in the Garden of Eden, when God told Adam and Eve, go and fill the earth, neither one of them could fulfill that mandate independently. Think about that.
Yes.
He couldn't say, I'll do it my way. She says, I do it my way. Yes. I don't believe that was just meant in the context of marriage for men and women to work together so integrally. So that means then that we really need, that's a model for the world. We need women in business. I found this out the other day, just last night. The countries that have had the best response to not spreading to the coronavirus are all led by women. Did you know that?
Wow.
All led by women, the countries that have had, including Germany. All of the countries that were led by women, they got on it fast enough, they did the right things. Hey, what can you say? And yet we still don't have the confidence to believe that we are born to lead. And so that's my goal, is to get women to have a new mindset about leadership, what it is.
Yeah, so really it is a shift that you're talking about, where if you're working from a model where you feel like you're working from a deficit, right, or a disadvantage, where you're coming into a situation, as you were saying, I'm a woman first in a male-dominated environment or work environment, or I may be a woman of color who's a leader, so I'm even a minority in regards to representation. If you're working from that deficit model, you're going to continue to miss the mark. It really requires not just you elevate your leadership in regards to the skills you bring to the table, but also your ability to invite other people in for the win, huh?
Absolutely. And I always say I'm working on a pitch to a different type of media. And I was looking at that last night. I'm thinking, like, what 3 things if I had to boil this down? But I'm thinking, first of all, we have to be proficient, but we usually are. Women usually are proficient because, first of all, we don't even apply for jobs unless we're 100% qualified. The men will apply. I believe this, I read last night, if there's 60%, if they have 60% of the requirements, they'll say, okay, it may say required, but they really just mean desired. No, women show up qualified. So, proficiency is a given. So we know that. So, know your job. We know that. But here's the deal. You have to be professional in how you present your ideas, how you present yourself. And so this is important. And that's why I want to write this book. I wrote this book so that women can understand. Listen, bring these to the table. Don't apologize for being brilliant. I mean, you know that you have I jokingly say you have more degrees than a thermometer.
Oh, I'm gonna have to use that one. That's really good.
But you know your stuff. I mean, how many people know neuropsychology? I'm like, I was looking at neuropsychology. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, you are. It is a thing. I mean, it sounds like I made it up, but it is a thing, people.
No, it really is. And I thought she deals with brain injuries and all that. That's heavy duty stuff. So you don't have to come to the table apologetically or say, well, maybe, sometimes studies have shown this. You know what you're talking about, and you have to put it forth, and don't expect for it not to be received. I expect people to listen. When I'm talking, I expect people to listen. And if somebody starts to interrupt, I'll just look at them and, is there a question? I can handle that in just a minute. I do. And listen, even if I'm speaking on stage, if somebody, too much of that, I'll say, hey, I work alone up here. All eyes up here.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, look. So I got to ask you this question, but I also kind of want to know what you think about this. So you talk about these things, these qualities that women possess that make them strong leaders, and you touched a little bit on that, but what are some more qualities you have, especially when I'm thinking of the context of dealing with things like pushback? Like you were talking about, if somebody's interrupting you, trying to steal your ideas, or maybe you steal your ideas. You're in a meeting, you share something, and they just don't listen to what you have to say, but Bob or Tom over here shares your same idea and it's well received. So what kind of qualities can we tap into as women that will help us navigate those things with grace?
Well, we need to, first of all, speak loudly enough so that we're heard. And we got to speak with authority. We have this little thing we do. Sometimes we'll have an inflection on our voices like, well, you think it could be do that, da, 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 da. And it's like, no, you said with finality, let your voice fall at the end of a sentence. Mm-hmm. I believe this is a great way to do this. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, this may not work, but you think, no, You can't be tentative when you're trying to be a woman of authority. You don't have to act like a man. You can still stay in your soprano voice.
You don't have to for that.
You don't have to go bass.
Yeah, you don't have to drop your register.
Right. And listen, I have been in situations where people took my idea. I'm thinking now I know I said it loudly enough because I always try to project wherever I'm sitting. I try to make sure my voice hits the back of the room. Now, not so loud, but I make sure that I say it slowly enough, that I articulate it, and that I say it with authority that says, I have done this. But listen, even with that, and I don't think men are intentional in that. I don't think they're trying to steal your idea. I just think they're just being a man. And, if they didn't think it was strong enough, they'll come back behind you and reiterate it. But I've learned to kindly look at a man if he does that and say, thank you so much, John, for your support on that idea when I initially told you about it or whatever. I'm letting him know it came from me because I may have told him about it before the meeting. And then he comes in like this is. And I said, and I'll add something to it. Originally, when I initially told you about that, it was blah, blah. And also, I've since then also found out that blah, blah, blah. Or I'll just say, thank you for your support on that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I love that. I love to get in the thick of those dynamics because sometimes it is just people stumbling into the habits that they have that aren't very good. Right. But then sometimes it's intentional.
Right. Yeah. And you have to tell them to stop.
And that's absolutely what you're talking about, setting that boundary, right? And that goes with that level of leadership where you have to be able to feel comfortable and able to assert that, right? I think this is what this book does so uniquely.
Thank you. You know what? And I see it's when somebody interrupts you like that, because this happens all the time. You just need to say, oh, let me finish my point. And you just keep talking. You don't let them. I've seen a lot of women get interrupted and they do this. They just go quiet and just kind of shrink back. It's like, oh, no. If somebody interrupts you, say, just a moment, let me just finish this point here. You can even smile because we're women.
Yes.
And they expect us to be, quote, ladylike. I think it's so crazy because one of the guys I interviewed for the book, I said, what would you do if you saw a woman in that situation where her point had just gotten taken and she turns to the man and say, hey, I just said that, Buster. He said, I would say, what is wrong with her? Why is she getting so emotional? I said, why is she getting emotional? Why is that late? Why are we labeled emotional? So anyway, he said, but you know what? He said, yeah, I guess if the leader is a lady, he said, because it's not ladylike for women to act like that. Right. Listen, that's a stigma that we have to live with, that they don't think it's ladylike for a woman to be that, forceful in her presentation. But if you put that out there to say, this is who I am, when I make my point, it's well made, it's well researched, and I know who I am. I love that scripture in the Bible that talks about the fact that she perceives that her merchandise is good. That's a proverb, Proverbs 31:18. Yes. She perceives that her merchandise is good. You got to know within yourself that you're bringing something great to the table and that people need to hear it. So you need to be passionate and excited about presenting it. I make an assumption that you want to hear this.
Yes. Well, the other thing that I started to understand when I was living in my own corporate life, and that was happening to me, because you don't understand when it's happening. But now, I got this full view and I'm like, that's what was happening. But what I understand too is that it became my responsibility to be a good steward over my skills, my gifts, my talents, my abilities. And what that meant was that I had to, at certain times when I otherwise wanted to shrink and hide.
Yeah, yeah. Never shrink. Never shrink. You know, that's defeat. Men don't appreciate that, you know, because and they're warriors. And we're not talking about how to really just please men, but listen, they set the rules for leadership. And if we're going to play the game, and you know, and listen, even apart from playing a game, when you have a calling and a career that you know you're supposed, this is what you're supposed to be doing, then you don't even think about who cares that you shouldn't be there. I don't deal with that. I don't care if I speak in churches, and I speak in churches, and once somebody introduced me, and the guy spent about 5 minutes explaining why he had a woman in his pulpit.
Wow. You invited me.
I think he needed to justify it because it was in a denomination that they didn't see a lot of women behind that sacred desk, they call it. And I'm thinking, I didn't even mention I don't have to lead with my femininity. I don't have to lead with my gender. I'm just, hey, here's a message for today. Today, I'm going to talk about how to have confidence. I don't care what else they're talking about. That's of no consequence. I'm here with a message.
Yes, I'm here on a mission. I love it.
There you go.
So, Deborah, you had some powerful women contribute to this book. They shared their stories, their challenges, their wisdom. Can you share a little bit about why you chose to take this approach when you were writing on this topic versus the traditional where it's just your point of view and maybe some research?
Well, you know, there's a saying that none of us is as smart as all of us. And so I thought, okay, you know, you get so much synergy going when you have other people's experiences. And when I talked to Ava DuVernay, who's my favorite Hollywood director, she's just so awesome. She's a Black woman. And I asked her, and I tried to ask questions that people don't normally get asked. I said, listen, you are unique. You're an anomaly in Hollywood. You know, there are one or two Black women directors. And she said, I said, do you carry the burden of your race? Do you feel like you have to perform and you have to excel because you're Black? And she said, I do carry that. But the truth of the matter is, most of us who have excelled, we feel like we do have to, quote, represent. We do. And I'm sure you've experienced this, right?
Yeah.
You know, you feel like you have to do that. So we have the additional burden of not just being a woman or just being a person in a job, but it's like, oh, listen, if I fail, that's a black mark on my race, no pun intended.
Right.
That's a mark on You know, it's like, oh, I can't fail because, you know, if I fail, that means Black folks fail. But that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself.
That's a lot to carry.
It is. But she said, I carry that. And she said, but I don't carry it as a burden. I carried it as an opportunity. She said, it's as an honor, she said. So I thought, okay, I'm going to start seeing it that way rather than trying so hard to excel because I want the whole race to be proud of me. Yeah.
Right. That's a very good share. I think I shared with you too that I've helped a lot of women kind of unburden themselves, unlevy themselves with this thing that I'm carrying my family on my back, my ancestors on my back, my people on my back, all my children on my back. And just understanding that you have to be able to be somewhat focused on you, what you're doing, and be connected in alignment with your purpose. Otherwise, you're not going to be any good to any of those people if you burn yourself out, if you run yourself ragged, or you misrepresent your call because you're running after chasing everybody else's agenda, except for what you're there to do.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. You know, let the work speak for itself. You know, if you excel and do well and do what you need to do, then people will hear about it. Don't worry about it. Don't let that be your goal. It's, I got to make a name for myself. You know, and I've been in that place many times when you're the first woman or the only woman or the only Black or the first Black. That position of distinction can be very stressful. Trying to maintain it. You know, rather than saying, hey, God has brought me into this position. I'm here for a purpose, and I'm gonna maximize my potential here. And that's it. I'm in that space now with my writing and all of that. I mean, I never had classes on writing, and this is my 18th book. And I always say I'm not a great marketer. I know I shouldn't say those negative things. I'm not a great marketer. Let me be positive about this. I am positively the worst marketer I
know. Well, see, this is a woman that knows her limits, right? She knows her bounds. She knows when to ask for help.
You saw that recently in a project you and I did together. But I'm just like, marketing is not my thing. But here's the thing. Content is my thing. And I try to write things that's going to change people's lives. So when I'm working on how is this going to take somebody to the next level? That's my only intent. I don't care that this is the 18th book and it has to do better than the other 17. I don't care about that. That's you know, that's not me. If I get some good content out there, empower people, take them to another level, they'll buy the book and they'll tell a friend.
They sure will. I know I've been telling everybody I could find about this book. You have to get a copy. For those of you who are like, what is in this book? I have to get it. I'll be giving you some of the details about how you can get this book, but definitely it is worth your time.
And look how cute it is.
Yes, I love the cover. It's beautiful. It is beautiful.
It is. I love it. I love it.
Yes.
That's my publisher. I didn't have anything to do with that other than the fact that I wanted it red because that's a power color. Yes. And I want women to come out, listen, it's important how you present yourself. You want to present yourself in a way that you have executive presence. No matter what you're doing, you want to say, I'm comfortable with authority here. I'm ready for it. I don't just know what I'm doing. As you and I have talked about in previous conversations, I'm not just trying to be a technician. I don't want to just be a worker bee, but I'm a person who can lead, and I can lead well.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Deborah.
Yeah.
The more I read about you, the more impressed I am, and the more just like, oh my goodness. But Deborah, you have worked with multiple billion-dollar organizations, including serving as a VP at a Fortune 500 company and in an executive level position at another. But for you, I know you've touched a little bit on some of the things you had to overcome for yourself, but what would you say, especially on this pathway to leadership, have been some of the biggest obstacles that you have faced?
Okay, trying to make sure that you keep a great attitude when you've been victimized. But I always say I'm never a victim, because if you think you're a victim, then you lose your hope. And hope is energizing. So no matter what has happened, whether I was passed over or discriminated against, I like to tell the story of these parents who had twins, and one of them was a pessimist and one was an optimist, and they took them to the psychiatrist and said, why are they so different? And they tried to analyze the boys, and they took one to the room, the pessimist, and they showed him this room full of toys, and he looked at it and he finally started to cry, and he said, I'll probably break them all someday. I won't enjoy them very long. Then they took the optimist to a room full of manure, and excuse the example, but it's a great story. A room full of manure. He dove into it and just started slinging stuff everywhere, digging. And they said, what are you doing? He said, with all this manure, there's got to be a pony under here somewhere. I always look for the pony. I miss the crap. Look for the pony. And let me tell you, I find the pony.
Yes.
I do. I mean, from the time I was in college where they discriminated against me, wouldn't give me my grade, teacher called me in, senior year, few weeks before graduation, you and Miss Patmore have tied for the A. See, I remember her name. Miss Patmore didn't look like me. You have to be re-examined to see which one of you would get the A. I got the B and I never saw my grade. Listen, that didn't scar me, but it positioned me to say you can never not be great in grammar and English and all of that.
Right.
Well, I didn't know that 25 years later I'd be writing books, traditionally published, turning them in at the last minute because the publisher says your manuscripts come in so clean we can let you do that because we don't have to work on it like we do others. See, so that was the pony.
Yes. Yes. I love it.
You see what I'm saying? So you got to have a mindset that says, I'm just going to keep going forward. We got a lot of stuff going on in our country right now. And you and I both know that it's real. I don't like people minimizing it to say racism isn't systemic. It is real. It is very, and listen, I'm personally angry, but I am not stuck in it because anger is an emotion of protest. I'm protesting the inequities as much as anybody else, but we got to keep moving forward. We can't be so angry until we tell our story, even in a way that engenders anger to the next generation. We just got to keep moving forward. Next is my favorite word. It's my favorite word. Next.
I love it. I love it. And you know, the thing too about that is, I was just talking with somebody about that today, is if you internalize and listen to everything negative everyone ever has to say about you, you will never do anything.
No, you won't. You won't.
So you can't stay stuck in being afraid of how others see you and being so caught on what they say and how they say it and anticipating what that means by that. You really just have to be clear about who you are, what you're here to do, and whose you are. Don't you think?
Absolutely. And you can always ask the question, what happened here? When something doesn't happen the way you expected, don't be afraid that if you speak up, you're going to be thrown out the door. When you know what you bring to the table, you perceive that your merchandise is good. You know what you bring to the table. I'm never worried about being fired. It's like, you'd be nuts to fire me. because I know how I work, but I also know that I
Yeah.
speak up. And so, don't get stuck in that. As you said, let's just keep moving forward. Don't worry about it, but do ask. When you see something, when you see you've been discriminated against or whatever, just ask and let your request be made known to those. I would really like that next position. Tell me what I need to do to get qualified for it. I'd like your support.
Yes.
I'd like you to mentor me. Don't be afraid to ask people that. Can I just ask you something from time to time? What do you see in me that's holding me back? Help me. I'm a forward thinking and a forward moving person. I need your help. You'd be surprised how ego massaging that is.
Yes, and I think for a majority of people, they do want to help. So they just maybe don't know how. So if you're able to ask, that's the big thing we got to do, ladies, here. We're high performers. We do it on our own. I don't need nobody. I can do it. But asking for help, like I said, inviting others in for the win is going to be the greatest thing that you can do for yourself, the greatest thing you can do for your career. And if you're not in a position where you're leading in a traditional sense at a corporation or organization, you're just leading in your area of influence, your family, you're leading at your church or what have you. It's the same thing. Being able to set the boundaries that you need to be able to protect your peace, your time, your purpose, and then being able to ask people when you need help.
Absolutely. So bring your full womanhood to the table. Don't hide those skills. Yes, we're collaborative. That's a great thing, but you got to manage those skills. As I said, none of us is as smart as all of us. So bring people in, get their input, but don't be afraid when it's time to make that independent decision. And so that's what I mean about managing these traits. Yes, we're nurturing, but don't take it so far that you are mothering. Those are the kinds of things you want to do. You're a servant leader, but don't do all the work. Lead. Do lead, But again, I one of my greatest mentors that I have right now, and just a really, really powerful man, I went up to him and we sat on a board together, and I know he's very influential, and some other minority person who was a man had just said, this guy made a big difference in my career. But I made a beeline to him and said, I can't imagine where I would have been in my career if I had someone like you in my life along the way. Do you mind if I can call you from time to time and bounce an idea off of you? He's the reason I'm focusing on women and Christian women in business or Christian women professionals. He said, if you love the scriptures and you love writing and blah, 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 he said, you should make that a niche market. I hadn't thought about that. Just one little 5 minutes with him kind of gave me a better sense of direction. You have not because you ask not.
Because you ask not. Or like my grandmama used to say, closed mouths don't get fed. So I want to end this on asking you three suggestions for how you can lead like a woman when you experience things like adversity, deal with unconscious or gender bias, or even issues related to intersectionality in the workplace. I know we've talked a lot about how to kind of come back to the standard, the golden rule, right? But what would be your top 3 suggestions when dealing with these kind of microaggressions?
Well, first of all, I make sure that I'm not super sensitive. I've never been super sensitive to some things. You got to learn to ignore. But if they're recurring and you see that they're going to be detrimental to your effectiveness, then you want to learn how to address issues. But you address them by asking questions, not by accusing. You'll say, what was meant by that exactly? What was the reasoning there? Help me to understand. That's a great phrase to use. Help me to understand. All right. But you also want to make sure you have a good, strong network of people. That's why you don't want to go in being so political that you divide people. Look, I am not political. At least I say that. I'm not going to put myself out there because I may be turning off somebody who could help me later. So I am just very neutral when it comes to things, especially in my public life. You're not going to see me on Facebook endorsing people. That's just my strategy as a woman of color, because the assumption is if you're a person of color, you are blah, blah, blah. But adversity, see it as a stepping stone. What can I learn from this? Don't ever let it cause you to shrink back. And always, always, always have a great attitude. Be personable. Even if you're disappointed, don't let it affect your pursuit of excellence. I don't care if how disappointed I am. I don't let it demoralize me to the point where I start to do shabby work. I'll always be looking at my options. I don't believe any place is married to me. Always keep your options open. Always be looking out there and stay connected to power movers in other circles. So that's important. And for sure, be culturally diverse. You need people that don't look like you. You need a lot of friends, especially if you're a minority, a woman of color. You need a lot of people in the majority culture who know you and know your skills and know that you are a nice person. You're personable. So always be personable. Don't be that angry person. I say don't be that skunk at the picnic. Don't be the skunk at the picnic.
I love
Okay.
it. Yes, I love it. And you know, one of the things that I suggest people do is kind of this framework where you kind of work backwards. Consider yourself already starting at the level of having that executive presence. So if you ask yourself, what would I do in this position as the CEO? Or what would I do in this position as the VP? Or what would I do in this position as the person that is in charge? Like Deborah was saying, you maintain a positive attitude, you maintain your
Yes.
professionalism, you would make sure that you hold those boundaries in place, right? And then you start accessing your network. If it's cultivating relationships, leveraging community, being able to
Yes.
navigate and negotiate for impact. These, you kind of work yourself backwards when you think about that. And Deborah's book helps you to do that very astutely. So this time has gone by so quickly. I had a
Yes.
ball. Thank you, Deborah, for coming. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my joy. And if they want more information, I have confrontingissues.com, or just go to my name, Google my name. I got lots of free information that can empower you. DeborahPegues.com, Pegues, or just any way you spell it, it'll find me.
Yes, she will
Okay.
show up with all of her accomplishments, achievements, $1 million sold. I mean, 1 million books sold.
2 million.
2 million, yes. 1 million for taming your tongue, but yes,
Right.
2 million.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
and
God.
this book is probably going to surpass that. But
I
that
pray.
Lead Like a Woman book, yes, we're praying. I'm telling you, this is a movement, right? And I'm
All
not a
right.
political person either. But now with our most recent vice president-elect for the Democratic Party, Ms. Kamala Harris, what you're seeing is women coming to the forefront, being more bold about using their voice. And so this book, like I said, is right on time. So get
Yes.
your copy. It's available in Audible or audio, as well as hard copies will be coming out soon, right, Deborah?
That's right. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, the fact that we do have a vice presidential nominee who is a woman. And I'm so proud of Melania Trump last night when she spoke
Yes.
at the convention, just being her own person,
Amazing
just putting,
story.
see, we
Yeah.
need to just be proud of women. We just need to be
Yes.
proud of women right now, stepping out,
Yes.
leading out. So that's what I'm proud of all women.
Yes. Me
Yeah.
too. And it
Yeah.
just makes me want to be braver
Yep.
about speaking out, because like you said, when you know that you're connected to a mission and an impact, you get energized by that. And then you don't care what people say. You don't care
Yeah.
about what forums you're going into, because you know someone is waiting on your message. So I just
Absolutely.
want to encourage you ladies that are listening here today. Someone is waiting on your message. And so the purpose of today's episode was to help you to learn how to lead by faith and how to lead like a woman. Thank you so much again, Ms. Deborah Smith Pegues, for being here. And
Thank
again,
you.
if you want a copy of that book, it is called Lead Like a Woman.
Thank you for joining the conversation. Remember to subscribe, share, and join us next time.